Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Star Fox 2. In the last part we started off Expert Mode and got about halfway through it. And now we got a lot more planets, a lot more missiles, a whole lot more stuff to take care of, including actually one of my favorite missile types in the game. It's just one, it's just got several targets on it, and I find it's fun to actually try to shoot this one out of the sky. Despite there being all the different types of missiles, I believe they all do the same damage to Corneria. It's just whether or not they actually make contact kind of deal. Same with enemy squadrons, I think damage there is relatively universally consistent. Unless I'm just completely wrong because of relative inexperience, in which case, hey, whoops. You shouldn't be letting at least the missiles reach Corneria in most cases anyway, so, So now that we got 3 more planets to take care of, we are going to have to deal with Starwolf now. However, like with the previous run, just going to speed these up because these fights just get more precise. They don't actively change that much. So you might remember last time, I mentioned that Expert Mode likes to get a little cute with the switches you need to press in order to open the base on some of the planets. Meteo is probably the quote-unquote cutest. This is the one I briefly mentioned last time, where it's essentially luck-based, but not quite. There's 2 different types of switches here. The first one we're going after is sort of a watermill type, where you just need to get the blue circle on top. A single shot is never enough to do that. You need to do 2 or 3 shots in a row and then let it go and run to see if it lands with the right thing on top. Sometimes it won't, sometimes it will, it kind of depends. I want to say there's actually some momentum based in that. The other one is more of a... Why can't I remember the name of the type of wheel? It's a Wheel of Fortune type wheel, essentially. There is a blue circle face you need to make sure is pointed at on one of the faces. There's one that has an X, and then there's some that just have nothing. There's an element of timing to this because this one does slowly stop when you hit it again. But it feels luck-based essentially because I actually can't pick out how many times it moves forward after you've hit it. I want to say it might be 2 spaces, so if it's consistent, I'm just wrong. I was here for a while on my first playthrough this difficulty. I think I was here arguably longer than some of the other stages just because I could not get them to land on the circle for the life of me. But I got it relatively quickly here. Which base is this one? Okay, it's this one. This one's not too bad. We gotta get between these 2 stairways, hit the switch in the middle, and then we actually get to go into a mini-boss. But first, come behind this door you can clip into to get the pepper coin. Again, the only way you're meant to know you can do that is by either accidentally running into a period, or by looking at the mini-map and noting that that square is not walls. In some regards, it does remind me of some of the weirder pickups in, like, the Metroid Prime games, where the only way you can tell that there's maybe a pickup there is by the pulsating tone the pickups make in those games. I'm immediately thinking of the one in Chozo Ruins that you need to roll behind a tree on a wall. There's a morph ball tunnel there. It's in the area right after you get the grapple beam that you can access. But at least there's that audio cue there. I think it's a little harder to find out you can clip through that wall unless you do it by complete accident, because at least on a first playthrough, I don't think you're going to be looking too much at the radar during the walker stages, at least. During the space stages, where there's a lot more open air around you, where you need to keep the depth in mind and all that, you're probably going to be looking a little more at that. But again, that also depends on the type of player you are. I definitely didn't, but you probably will. It's a very interesting... study is the word that's coming to mind, but it's not what I mean. It's interesting to look at. Looking at what someone will pick up on and adapt to very quickly in games, no matter the genre, versus what someone else will. Like, I'm an avid Metroid-like player, so I can pick up on level design cues in those pretty easily, but then I'll see someone else get lost on sections I solved in minutes, and I can be like, alright, I have the experience here, and I know what I'm looking for, but also they're probably looking at completely different details and trying to absorb information from those. Ace Attorney is also a very good case of that, where it's interesting to see what clues people will pick up on in what order to find out how to save your client and pin the crime on the true culprit. It kind of gets into that controversy we get every couple of years that's a quote-unquote controversy, where person gets mad that object in very realistically styled game is painted yellow to make it look interactable, when it's usually because in playtesting, people completely miss that thing, because not everyone has the same amount of experience with what to look for an interactable. If, say, they only play a game every couple of years, or they get a new game every couple of months, rather than, like, every couple of weeks kind of deal. Resident Evil 4 being the most recent version of that with the remake, because people got mad at a ladder being painted yellow in separate ways, apparently. I think the first time I remember seeing someone get mad at that was Uncharted, and there probably are more graceful ways you can maybe implement that, but it's the easiest and most direct because people are going to notice that almost universally. Also, we're actually seeing here on this playthrough the true danger of enemy squadrons. Like, yeah, they don't do the most damage per shot compared to a missile or the planet cannon, but if you let 1 or 2 squadrons stay on Corneria, they will very quickly build up their damage meter, because they are the only method of damage in the game that will actively hover on Corneria and continuously hit the planet. What I should have done on this expert run is, probably after even the stage before last, gone out of my way to go and take care of that one that's actively on the planet right now. Similarly to hard mode, by the way, once you get a certain amount of bases down, Andros does send out 2 extra carriers, so you have to fight 4 total. And that does mean Expert just has a ridiculous amount of levels compared to normal mode, for instance. Let's see, normal mode, 2 planets out of 4 at random, 2 carriers and Astropolis, so it's 5 levels-ish. Hard mode is 3 levels, 4 carriers and Astropolis, so 8 levels. Whereas, and this isn't counting like dogfights or missiles and all them as separate things, but then it's 11 levels on expert mode total, not counting all the other stuff. Obviously also not counting if you go out of your way on separate playthroughs after you've gotten the pepper coins on a difficulty to go back in for high scores by using the secret base to get like the homing blasters and all that to make things a little easier on yourself, because then that's technically 1 more level for every difficulty. This is one of the more annoying carriers in the game, if only because you need to actively search out every enemy to kill them, but they're actively hidden throughout the room. And this gets into something the game does every now and then with the radar, where sometimes in order for an enemy to be visible, you need to be within a certain distance of them. In most cases, those enemies are going to be close enough no matter what when you enter a room, but every now and then you get a case where they're just not. Also, this is actually from memory one of the few rooms in the game, one of the few areas in the game even, where rooms don't exactly end on the exact squares of the map. You get the rare half squares. Those don't happen too often in the game. With that said, we just got another one of these cores with the extra turrets. This is definitely an enemy type that is made much more quick with the twin blasters, but every enemy is made quicker with the twin blasters. Although some are made quicker than others, because every now and then I think there's some enemies you can hit 2 portions of them at once with them, so that makes that a little easier, considering even like the direct corner between 2 of these core pieces. You could probably hit both, more than likely. That's 3 carriers down for this difficulty, 1 to go. And that'll go down pretty quickly, considering we're going to get through most of the rest of this difficulty pretty quickly here from memory. Once you get to the point where the second group of planets shows up, yes, things can get pretty tense with all the missiles around. But given how short some of the levels are on expert mode still, especially if you just gun it directly for the objective and ignoring the pepper coins for the first time around, you're probably going to get through this relatively quickly. The bigger annoyance is dependent on luck because of what mini-bosses might get thrown at you, like this guy that's a teleporting phantom of sorts that just kind of turns around, fades out of existence, and then teleports behind you. I think this particular enemy type, first off, they use homing bullets. You really want to use your barrel rolls to bounce off of projectiles as much as you can. But I want to say this enemy flees relatively quickly. Like, by the time even the timer, I think, hits a 3, it can flee out of the arena no problem. Sometimes those are the types of enemies you really want to, like, let the satellite defense system take care of. And something I don't think I've mentioned, you can see what squadrons are made up of if you highlight them on the map. And then down where your health and all the information is, there'll just be, like, boxes showing what enemies are in those. So use that to also judge which ones you might want to go for yourself and which ones you should leave for the satellite defense station. Because the defense station, as long as it's active, can take out any of them. You just gotta make sure you choose the right ones to take out yourself more than anything. So, I did that really quickly. The one switch you need to press here on Macbeth in order to open the base is on a floating platform that rotates around the center of the area. And it's one of the few times in the game where the active pausing of your momentum when you're transforming from R-Wing to Walker and back and forth can actively mess with you because you need to really lead your shot while trying to land that, otherwise you're just gonna fall right into the lava and take some damage. And now I need to fight Night Knack again. Great. This room's actually a little bit harder to fight it in though because there's a lot more just pillars around that are blocking your access. Which means there's more ways to block their shots, yes, but that also means the angles to get behind and shoot it / hit it from the side are a little tighter. With that said, hidden pepper coin here in the top right corner. You know, something I needed to really try to track down at some point, not even that I really want to play the game, I was always interested enough in it. I was just more interested in the thing that came with it on Wii U. I need to try and track down that Starlink, what was the full subtitle of that battle for something on Wii U, because that came with like a proper R-Wing toy you could scan in and pilot. It even let you do the wings backwards according to some clips I've seen. And I just think that's a really good looking R-Wing, and it'd be nice to have, because there's not a lot of Star Fox merch out there. There's some here and there, and hell, Jack Specific even is doing toys for some of the more out there Nintendo franchises now. Like I know they just did a figure of Samus I need to try and track down at some point, like a local Target or Walmart. Just good luck to me finding that, because that stuff seems to be all over the place in where it gets sent, and I don't want to order from online, because I don't trust doing that for toys. / figures I like to display. I've had pretty split results on that stuff being arriving completely undamaged. Although speaking of eBay, I'm curious, what does a repro cart of Star Fox 2 go for? Repo cart, Star Fox 2, that's a 20-buck one of 64. Star Fox 2 SNES, I'm seeing some that are like 60 bucks. I wouldn't say that's worth it. Especially considering Star Fox Command completed box is 2 bucks. Star Fox cart only for the original is 15. Yeah, there's doing this on like just picking up a Super Nintendo Mini or the Nintendo Switch Online is a better value probably. Especially the Super Nintendo Mini, because I think there's very easy ways to just put your own other games onto that. So if you want to have that, have like most of the Super Nintendo's library, or at least the games you really like outside of that base 30, you can do that no problem. Alright, so coming up here I'd say is arguably one of the hardest to survive portions of Expert Mode. So your resolve is strong, now it's time to get serious. It's time for him to send out those mini-bosses that actively track you down. Show no mercy, crush them by any means possible. One of the two that I'm getting on this playthrough is the Hunter Fantron again, which we dealt with back on hard mode. We know how to deal with that. The other one that we're facing first, I'd say, is the worst thing to fight in the game on the whole. This is the Space Blade. The Space Blade is a sphere with 3 prongs on either side. The prongs serve one main purpose, and that is to be blades whenever it actively spins in circles to try to move to other parts of the screen. Otherwise, the sphere in the center has 3 cannons, 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, you need to destroy in order to open up the core for damage. That's not too hard when you're up close, but from a distance, which you really want to be in this fight for most of it due to its homing lasers that you need to barrel to avoid. It gets pretty precise to do this without getting hit a lot, especially if you're low on health like I am. The really annoying thing is when you get really close after a certain amount of homing shots to begin with. The Space Blade shoots out 5 spike balls in an arc that are very hard to avoid. You need to try to dodge up or down. You can shoot them down, but depending on where you were aiming comparatively, it's just going to be faster for you to try to avoid them before shooting them down. This fight can be rough, and based off my health situation, I probably should have swapped to Fox before this, but I actively have not been keeping track of Fox's health while commentating, so I forget actually how good of an idea that would have been. Probably would have still been kind of a bad idea at the end of the day. Again, you probably should be using the mother base a little more often on Expert Mode than I did here. Especially once the second wave of planets gets invaded, because especially if like one of the first planets that gets invaded is Meteo, you have a very quick point of return for any of the other planets to just get a full heal. Oh no, this isn't the Hunter Fantron, this is the Tektron. This is the sequel to the Hunter Fantron. This one's annoying in that it works a little bit like the boss with the wheels in some of the carriers and bases, where when it's not firing its lasers directly at you that you can avoid by barrel rolling, it moves several times across the screen to try and either get behind you or ram into you directly. It's only vulnerable though while it's attacking, and I want to say this is one of the few of these fights that can actively run away as well. And I actively forget if a mini-boss runs from you like this, if their health gets restored. I want to say it does, just given the era. But given they actively save what opponents in a just standard enemy unit squadron you've defeated, if one runs away when you've defeated like the other 4, they might save it, but don't quote me on that. Alright, that little nail biter's out of the way. But now you might notice it briefly. We're directly on top of a dogfight. The final member of Star Wolf, besides Wolf himself for this playthrough, is upon us. To this day, like I mentioned earlier, I don't know what causes Star Wolf members to leave the planet they're guarding. I'm not sure if maybe they spot you in low health, so they try to go in for the quick takeout. I'm not sure if it's dependent on how long you took to get to the planet beforehand. It could be either of those. I'm going to assume it's probably they noticed you at low health. And if it is that, well, be careful. You might be noticing, like I said, I got a little reckless this playthrough, and the damage percentage I think is about to be at 90. Oh, yeah. This is why I should have really gone after that one enemy squadron that was staying on Corneria for a while, because then I wouldn't be in as tight of a situation as I am right now, because this squadron's getting close. If I don't take them out, they're going to do extra damage and potentially destroy the planet. The satellite defense station just got overrun, but that's an easy fix, and that takes a while to charge up anyway. And if memory serves, the moment we leave this particular squadron, I think Andros orders the remaining carrier to go on to planet cannon mode. So, yeah, expert mode can really bear its fangs at you if you let one thing stew for too long. Multitasking and learning to go for even smaller targets really is key in the later parts of this game. And there is a funness to that. There's a level of alertness that a lot of games don't actively bring that can be brought by that. And it can be fun, but again, I do recommend most players honestly stop with hard mode unless they're super curious, because the amount of damage you can take on top of everything else can just make this, I'm not gonna say a slog to play, but it's stressful to say the least in a way that I don't usually enjoy my games being. Like, I've done a lot of stressful things in games, including going for trophies, but there's some things I just tend to avoid because they overwhelm me with it. That's why I don't usually play RTSs. I think the only ones of those I really played growing up, besides maybe booting up my brother's copy of, like, the original Warcraft or something, maybe once or twice, maybe Warcraft 2 or 3 now that I think about it, was, like, Pikmin. And even then, I think I talked about this during the Metroid Prime LP. I wanted to play Metroid Prime. My mom didn't want me to play that, and she suggested I play Pikmin instead, but I went, no, that looks stupid! And I'm like, no, I like Pikmin a lot. I'm bad at it, but I like it. Need to pick up 4, that looks real neat. But there's other games coming out, including Spider-Man and Mario, both of which will be out by the time this video gets uploaded. It is currently October 7th for scale. This is the final of the star carriers in the game, and it's one that actively tripped me up a little bit on the first time because I just tried to gun through it. But you actively do need to stop right here at this particular ramp, because there's a switch here you need to hit to raise the wall in the distance. I rammed straight into it and was confused the enemy didn't spawn in, and I think I wasted enough time that Corneria got hit by a missile, and that was a game over, I'm fairly certain at that point. Whoops. Now, something I forget if I've mentioned or not yet, because I don't think we've even seen it in the LP. I've talked up the Twin Blasters and how good they are. I believe there's even a step above the Twin Blasters that's not the homing blaster from the secret base. But I think you need to get 2 Twin Blasters on the same character, and usually I would try to swap and get Twin Blasters on both characters first, and the damage from that is very ridiculous. But it's rare enough that you're probably not going to see it unless you actively use the the secret base to go out of your way to get it. I can maybe count the amount of times I've actively gotten it naturally, maybe on one hand. That's in a game I have already played enough times to only be on one hand to begin with. So maybe use that to your advantage if you're trying to really go aggressive and go for high scores. Which there is an active purpose for that I'm going to talk about next time. It's the one thing I'm not doing the LP I've foreshadowed about 3 times now. Also, it's not exactly what I've been doing throughout the LP, but I do recommend if you've used up all of your sub-weapons, even if you have one you prefer, like just getting the smart bombs. If you've used them all and you're out, just grab whatever one's enemies drop because it'll still prove useful probably somehow. Like, if you're low on health at this point in expert mode, and if you used all your smart bombs, your heals, and a shield like the one I currently have drops, grab it. It'll come in handy probably in one of the Star Wolf fights especially. Anything is better than nothing in that regard, and it can really help in a tight pinch. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 8, we finish off expert mode, and thus, the game. See you guys then.